The morning alarm blared across the dormitory section of Galactica Strategic Academy with the efficiency of a military drill. Jamie Cross woke up instantly. His human reflexes, considered pathetically slow by galactic standards, had been trained through personal discipline to respond with unnatural speed. His roommate, a silicon-based organism from the Andromeda sector, had already vacated the room 2 hours earlier. Silence was his only companion. Jamie slid his feet to the cold metal floor and stared at his reflection in the polished surface of his desk. Pale skin, brown hair cut short but still somehow managing to look disheveled, and eyes that betrayed nothing of what lurked behind them. He was 17 by Earth standards, which made him either a child or an ancient, depending on which species was making the judgment. Administrative notification. The room's AI announced, Student Cross, Jamie, Human. Terra designation Earth. Your class assignment has been processed. You have been placed in Zeta 13 combat strategy. Location, East Wing, Floor 7, Room 713. Attendance required in 45 standard minutes. Jamie frowned. There must be a mistake. I applied for Theta 9 Diplomatic Corps. The AI paused, its processing lights flickering. No error detected. Assignment, Zeta 13. Authorization, Command Level Override. Signature, Strategic Operations. A small smile crept across Jamie's face. It wasn't a happy expression, more like the face of someone who had just confirmed a long-held suspicion. Thank you, he said, picking up his regulation bag. Inside was a standard-issue tablet, 3 notebooks made of actual paper, a rarity he'd insisted on bringing from Earth, and a small silver locket that contained no pictures, just a pressed flower petal that had long since dried to a brittle husk. The halls of the academy stretched before him like arterial passages of some vast mechanical beast. Students of every conceivable form moved with purpose, some floating, others slithering, many walking on various configurations of limbs. Jamie moved through them with practiced ease, drawing minimal attention despite being the only human enrolled in the entire academy. When he reached room 713, he paused before the biometric scanner. The door hissed open before he could place his palm on it. Identity confirmed. Cross, Jamie, Human. Terra designation Earth, enter. The room fell silent as he stepped inside. 23 pairs of eyes, some with multiple pupils, some glowing with bioluminescence, all belonging to distinctly female forms, turned to stare at him with expressions ranging from surprise to disgust to predatory interest. At the front of the room stood a tall, gray-skinned instructor with 4 arms and eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Ah, our final student has arrived. Class Zeta 13. This is apparently your new classmate. There must be a mistake, said a voice like liquid metal. It belonged to a student with obsidian skin and hair that moved like living flame. This is an elite combat unit. We don't accept males, especially not human males. The instructor consulted her tablet. No mistake, Threxia. Command level override. She looked at Jamie with something approaching pity. I am Instructor Milna. This is Zeta 13, the Academy's specialized female combat unit. These students represent the galaxy's most lethal combat species. And now, you. Jamie looked around the room at the assembled warriors. Each represented the apex predator of their respective worlds. Some had exoskeletons gleaming with natural armor. Others possessed claws, fangs, or appendages clearly evolved for maximum damage. A few appeared almost humanoid, which Jamie knew from experience often meant they possessed the most dangerous abilities of all: psychic powers, molecular manipulation, or worse. And they were all watching him like he was breakfast. Jamie smiled. Good morning, he said, his voice soft yet carrying to every corner of the room. I look forward to learning with you all. The smile never left his face as he walked to the only empty seat, directly in the center of the room, surrounded on all sides by potential enemies. The class watched in silence as he sat, placed his simple bag on the desk, and folded his hands in front of him. His posture was perfect, his breathing steady, his eyes alert but relaxed. "Well," Instructor Milna said after an uncomfortable pause, "let us begin today's lesson on adaptive battlefield tactics." As she turned to activate the holographic display, Jamie caught Threxia staring at him with naked hostility. Her fingertips were literally smoldering, tiny wisps of smoke rising from where they touched her desk. Jamie nodded politely to her, his smile unchanged. The first assault came during the mid-morning nutrition break. Jamie had just unwrapped a protein bar from his bag when he felt, rather than saw, the movement behind him. "Your kind doesn't belong here," came a voice, like ice crystals breaking. A pale blue student with translucent skin through which complex circulatory systems were visible stood over him. "Humans are weak, fragile, prey." Jamie took a bite of his protein bar, chewed thoughtfully, and swallowed before responding. "I appreciate your concern for my well-being. Laridia Frostveins of the Cryos Collective." The student's translucent skin flushed darker blue. "How do you know my full name?" Jamie smiled that same unwavering smile. "I make it my business to know things. For instance, I know that your species considers it deeply offensive to be touched by a warmer-bodied being. Rest assured, I'll respect that boundary." The blue student backed away slightly, confusion replacing her aggression. "Your left secondary heart is beating faster than your right," Jamie observed casually. "That indicates stress in your species. Perhaps you should regulate your core temperature. The medical facilities here are excellent, but I'd hate for you to need them on my account." Laridia retreated, muttering something in her native tongue that the translation implants rendered as a series of temperature-related expletives. Jamie returned to his protein bar as if nothing had happened. By lunchtime, word had spread throughout Zeta-13 that the human was unusual. When Jamie entered the dining hall, a path cleared before him, not out of respect, but wariness. He selected a tray of synthesized nutrients, compatible with human digestion, and looked for a place to sit. Every table was full, except one, where Threxia sat alone, her flame-like hair writhing with increased agitation as he approached. "May I join you?" Jamie asked. "I'd rather eat with a parasite," Threxia replied. "Technically, from certain biological perspectives, that's exactly what you'd be doing," Jamie said, still smiling as he sat down across from her. "Though I assure you I'm quite self-sufficient." Threxia's eyes narrowed to burning slits. "You don't fear me." "Should I?" "I've killed humans before." Jamie's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in his eyes. "I know." Threxia leaned forward. "Then you know I could incinerate you where you sit, turn your fragile body to ash before anyone could intervene." "You could," Jamie agreed, taking a bite of his food. "But you won't." "Why not?" "Because you want to know why I'm smiling." Threxia sat back, her hair flames momentarily stilling. "You're insane. That's the only explanation." "An interesting hypothesis. Is insanity a concept your species experiences? Or is it purely a human construct? Perhaps what you perceive as madness is actually perfect clarity." Jamie took a sip of water. "By the way, your real name isn't Threxia, is it? Ashara Kelmore." The temperature around them spiked so suddenly that the synthetic material of the table began to warp. Students at nearby tables scrambled away. "How do you know that name?" Threxia hissed, her voice barely audible over the crackle of her now roaring hair flames. "As I told Laridia, I make it my business to know things." Jamie's expression turned serious for the first time. Things like the Ember Massacre on Proxima Colony. Things like the classified files on the Warriors of Eternal Flame. Things like the fact that you were just 14 when they recruited you and erased your identity. Threxia's hand shot across the table, grabbing Jamie's wrist. Her skin was hot enough to burn human flesh on contact. Yet Jamie didn't flinch, or try to pull away. "Speak another word and it will be your last," she warned. Jamie looked down at her hand on his wrist, then back to her eyes. "Your grip is strong, but your technique reveals formal military training, not the natural combat style of your species. They've been rewriting you, standardizing you, taking away what makes you unique." Threxia released him and stood up. "Stay away from me, human. Whatever game you're playing, I want no part of it." As she stormed away, Jamie examined the perfect handprint burned into his skin. He touched it gently, with his fingertips, wincing slightly. "Worth it," he murmured to himself, the smile returning to his face. The afternoon brought the first practical combat exercise. The class gathered in a massive training arena, where the environment could be manipulated to simulate any battlefield condition in the known galaxy. Instructor Milna announced the day's challenge. Psychological warfare simulation. Each student will face their deepest fear within the construct. The objective is not to defeat the fear, but to function effectively despite it. Failure to maintain combat readiness results in disqualification. The students formed a line at the entrance to the simulation chamber. One by one, they entered, faced their trials, and emerged, some triumphant, others shaken but passing, a few disqualified and sent to remedial training. When Jamie's turn came, Threxia stepped forward. "I volunteer to monitor the human simulation." Instructor Milna considered this. "Unusual request, but acceptable. Try not to let yesterday's incident with the Arcturian student repeat itself. We're still regrowing her limbs." Inside the monitoring chamber, Threxia watched as Jamie stood in the empty simulation room. "Afraid? Human?" she asked through the communication system. "Fear is natural," Jamie replied, "even healthy in the right context." Threxia's fingers danced over the controls. "Let's see what breaks you." Then, the simulation began. The room transformed into a burning village, human dwellings in flames, bodies scattered across the ground. The detail was immaculate, down to the smell of burning flesh and the sound of distant screaming. Jamie stood perfectly still, his eyes moving from corpse to corpse. "This isn't random," he said quietly. "This is New Haven Colony, August 17th, 7 years ago." Threxia checked the simulation parameters, confusion crossing her features. "That's not possible. The system generates fears from your own subconscious. I didn't program any specific scenario." Jamie walked through the burning village until he reached a particular house, more thoroughly destroyed than the others. He knelt beside the ruins and gently touched the scorched ground. "Mom, Dad, Sarah." He named each body as he passed them. "This isn't a simulation of my fear. This is my memory." Threxia's voice had lost its edge when it came through the speaker. "The system must be malfunctioning." Jamie stood and turned toward the monitoring station, seeming to look directly at Threxia through the one-way glass. "No, it's working perfectly. It's showing me my deepest fear, that I'll forget their faces, that I'll forget why I came here." "End simulation," Threxia commanded. The burning village disappeared, leaving Jamie standing alone in the empty room. When he emerged from the chamber, the other students gave him a wider berth than before. Something had changed in how they perceived him, not just as an oddity, but as something unpredictable. Instructor Milna approached him as the class was dismissed. "An interesting performance today, Cross." "Thank you, Instructor." "Not a compliment. Your file says you're a war orphan, but it doesn't specify the circumstances." Jamie's ever-present smile tightened slightly. "Some details were deemed classified, I suppose." "Indeed." Milna studied him with her light-absorbing eyes. "The Academy has many resources. If you need psychological support—" "I'm fine, thank you," Jamie interrupted politely. "Though I do have one question." "Yes?" "Who authorized my transfer to Zeta 13? The override came from strategic operations, but someone specific had to issue it. Milna's forearms tensed simultaneously. That information is not available to students. Of course. My apologies. Jamie bowed slightly in the formal academy manner. Have a pleasant evening, instructor. As he walked away, Milna activated her personal communicator. He's asking questions about his placement. Yes. The specific authorization. No. I didn't tell him. But he knows something. Yes. General. I understand. I'll continue to observe. Jamie returned to his dormitory to find a message waiting on his tablet. Anonymous, untraceable. It contained just 3 words. Watch your back. His smile widened. The second day in Zeta 13 began with tactical simulation exercises. The class was divided into teams of 4, with Jamie deliberately placed with some of the most aggressive students, including a reptilian draconian whose scales could cut through metal, a quantum wraith who could phase in and out of solid matter, and a psi-dominant telepath who made no secret of her disgust at having to touch a human mind. The objective is simple, Instructor Milna explained. Capture the opposing team's flag while protecting your own. Lethal force is prohibited, but everything short of permanent damage is permitted. The simulated battlefield was a dense, urban environment, with crumbling buildings and limited visibility. As soon as the exercise began, Jamie's teammates abandoned him, clearly intending to use him as bait while they pursued their own strategy. Jamie found himself alone in hostile territory, unarmed, and with at least 3 enemy combatants actively hunting him. He ducked into a partially collapsed building and found a defensible position with multiple escape routes. Tactical analysis, he murmured to himself. 3 primary threats. Liridia can track thermal signatures. The Mavorian can detect movement through vibration. The Hive Mind Collective functions as a distributed sensor network. A flash of blue through a broken window told him Liridia was closing in. Jamie removed his outer jacket and draped it over a broken pipe protruding from a wall, positioning it near a heat exhaust vent. Then he crawled through a narrow opening in the floor to the level below. The building shook as something massive slammed into it. The Mavorian, no doubt, trying to flush him out through vibration detection. Jamie remained perfectly still, controlling his breathing the way he'd taught himself during countless sleepless nights. The human is on the upper level, came Liridia's voice. I can see his heat signature. Converging on your position, responded another voice, the collective hive mind speaking through its humanoid avatar. Jamie waited until he heard them moving above him, then slipped out through a ground-level opening. Instead of running away, however, he circled around to where he knew the enemy team's flag would be less defended, now that 3 of their members were occupied with him. The flag stood in the center of a clear zone, with only a single guard, the Quantum Wraith, who could materialize and dematerialize at will, making her nearly impossible to sneak past. Jamie didn't try to sneak. He walked directly into the open. Hello, he called cheerfully. Lovely day for a tactical exercise, isn't it? The Wraith solidified, her translucent form becoming briefly visible. You're either very brave or very stupid, human. I've been called both, Jamie agreed. Though I prefer to think of myself as pragmatic. For instance, I have pragmatically deduced that you can only remain solid for about 60 seconds before needing to revert to quantum state. A limitation of your species' physical structure. The Wraith drifted closer. And what do you plan to do with this information? You can't touch me when I'm phased. True, Jamie acknowledged. But I don't need to touch you. I just need you to make a choice. What choice? Whether your personal vendetta against humans is worth losing this exercise for your team. The Wraith hesitated. What are you talking about? While we've been chatting, my team has been closing in on your flag. They'll be here in approximately 30 seconds. You can either stay here and try to stop me, knowing I have no intention of going for the flag myself, or you can phase through that wall and intercept my teammates." The Wraith's form flickered as she glanced behind her. "You're bluffing. Your team abandoned you." "Did they? Or did I suggest that strategy because I knew it would divide your team's attention?" Jamie's smile never wavered. 20 seconds now." The Wraith made her decision, phasing through the wall in the direction Jamie had indicated. As soon as she vanished, Jamie sprinted forward, grabbed the flag, and activated his emergency beacon to signal success. The simulation ended abruptly. The urban environment dissolved, leaving the class standing in the training arena. Instructor Mil-Na looked furious. "Team 2, explain yourselves," she demanded. The Wraith materialized, confusion evident in her shifting features. "There was no enemy team approaching. The human tricked me." Jamie handed the flag to Mil-Na. The objective was to capture the flag. The method was left open to interpretation. "Your own team abandoned you," Mil-Na noted. "Yet you turned that disadvantage into a winning strategy." "I prefer to think of it as finding opportunity in difficulty." The instructor's multiple eyes narrowed. "Team 2, remedial tactics training for allowing yourselves to be manipulated. Team 1, standard victory protocols except for cross. Report to the psychological evaluation department immediately." "May I ask why?" Jamie inquired politely. "Because I'm beginning to think there's more to you than appears in your file. Human. And in my class, unknown variables are potential threats." Jamie nodded respectfully. "Of course, instructor. I'm happy to comply." As he walked toward the exit, he passed Threxia, who was watching him with an expression that had shifted from outright hostility to wary curiosity. "How did you know the Wraith would believe you?" she asked quietly. "I didn't," Jamie admitted. "But people generally see what they expect to see." She expected deceit from a human. So that's what she found. Just not in the way she anticipated. Threxia studied him for a moment longer. "You're not what you appear to be, are you?" For the first time, Jamie's smile faltered slightly. "None of us are, Ashara." The psychological evaluation department was located in the most secure section of the academy. Jamie was escorted by 2 security drones to a sterile white room containing nothing but a single chair, facing a large mirror that was obviously one-way glass. He sat in the chair and folded his hands in his lap. The picture of cooperation. His smile, which had become something of a trademark in just 2 days, remained fixed on his face. After several minutes of silence, a door opened, and a tall, willowy being with 6 fingers on each hand entered. Her skin was pale green, and her eyes were completely black, without iris or pupil. "Good afternoon, Jamie Cross. I am Dr. Sen, head of psychological operations." "Pleasure to meet you, Doctor, though I admit I'm curious about why I've been singled out for evaluation." Dr. Sen took a seat opposite him. "Unusual behavioral patterns trigger automatic assessments. Your tactics during today's exercise, combined with your performance in yesterday's fear simulation, have raised questions." "I'm an open book," Jamie said, spreading his hands. "Ask away." The doctor activated a small device that projected a holographic display between them. "Your academic record prior to joining the academy is exemplary. Top percentile in strategic thinking, psychological profiling, and historical analysis. Yet you applied to the diplomatic corps rather than strategic operations, despite your obvious aptitude for the latter. I believe understanding others is the foundation of both diplomacy and strategy," Jamie replied smoothly. "The difference is merely in application." "Indeed." Dr. Sen's 6-fingered hand manipulated the display. "What interests me is this gap in your record. Ages 10 to 14, after the New Haven incident but before your admission to the Earth Military Preparatory School. 4 years unaccounted for." Jamie's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened slightly. "A difficult time. I was processed through several foster systems before finding stability." "Our records indicate otherwise." Dr. Sen leaned forward. Those years coincide with a series of information breaches in highly secure military databases. Specifically, databases containing information about the Ember Brigade and their operations on human colony worlds. That sounds like a matter for security operations, not a psychologist, Jamie observed. It becomes my concern when a student displays intimate knowledge of classified information that shouldn't be accessible to them, like knowing Threxia's true identity, which is protected by the highest levels of security clearance. Jamie remained silent, his smile finally fading into a neutral expression. I'll ask directly, Dr. Sen continued. How did you access classified military files? And what is your purpose in this academy? Everyone has secrets. Dr. Sen, Jamie said quietly. Even the academy. Even you. The doctor's expression remained unchanged. Is that a threat, Mr. Cross? Not at all. Merely an observation that privacy is valuable to all sentient beings. For instance, I respect your right not to discuss your work with the memory modification program that the Ember Brigade uses on its recruits. Dr. Sen's black eyes somehow managed to widen despite having no discernible iris or pupil. This interview is over. She stood abruptly. You will be escorted back to your dormitory and confined there until further notice. As the security drones led him away, Jamie's smile returned. Have a pleasant evening, Doctor. Do give my regards to General Valzir. I look forward to meeting him personally. The doctor's voice followed him down the corridor. How do you know that name? Jamie didn't answer, but his smile widened fractionally. Back in his dormitory, Jamie found himself under virtual house arrest. The door was locked, communications restricted, and a security drone positioned outside. None of this seemed to concern him as he sat cross-legged on his bed, eyes closed in what appeared to be meditation. His roommate, the silicon-based Andromeda native, entered cautiously. You have caused quite the disturbance, human. The entire academy is buzzing with rumors. Rumors can be useful, Jamie replied, without opening his eyes. They travel faster than official communications and often contain elements of truth that authorities would prefer to suppress. They say you have illegal knowledge, that you've hacked secure systems. Now, Jamie opened his eyes. And what do you think, Crix? The silicon being's crystalline structure shifted in what might have been a shrug. I think anyone who voluntarily enters Zeta-13 either has a death wish or a hidden agenda. Possibly both. Perceptive. The question is, Crix continued, whether your agenda threatens the rest of us. Some are saying you're a human spy, others that you're seeking revenge for something. Jamie uncrossed his legs and leaned forward. What if I told you there are things happening in this academy that affect every student here? Things hidden even from the instructors. Crix's crystalline body glinted as he moved closer. I would say that sounds like conspiracy thinking. Not a conspiracy theory if it's true. Jamie reached under his mattress and pulled out a small device, no larger than his thumbnail. This contains evidence that certain students, particularly those in specialized combat classes like Zeta-13, are being subjected to memory modifications and psychological conditioning without their knowledge or consent. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious crime, Jamie countered. One perpetrated by high-ranking officials who believe the ends justify the means. Crix was silent for a moment, his crystalline structure pulsing with internal light as he processed this information. Why tell me this? We are not friends. Because tomorrow things will change dramatically, and I wanted at least one person to understand why. Jamie replaced the device under his mattress. Also, your silicon-based neural structure makes you resistant to the memory modifications they use. You might remember what others forget. A chime sounded, indicating the end of the visitation period. Crix moved toward the door, but paused before exiting. Whatever you're planning, human, be careful. This academy has ways of making problems disappear. I'm counting on it, Jamie replied, his smile returning. The next morning, Jamie was escorted not to the Zeta 13 classroom, but to a special training facility deep within the Academy's restricted section. The room was circular, with viewing stations positioned around a central arena. In those stations sat not only the students of Zeta 13, but also various high-ranking Academy officials. Instructor Milna met him at the entrance. "This is irregular, Cross, but given the circumstances, the Strategic Command has authorized a special evaluation." "May I ask what kind of evaluation?" "A comprehensive one." Her voice held no emotion. "Physical, psychological, tactical. The command wants to understand exactly what they're dealing with." Jamie was led to the center of the arena, where a single chair waited. As he sat, restraints automatically engaged around his wrists and ankles. The lights dimmed everywhere except directly above him, creating the impression of a spotlight. A voice echoed through the chamber, deep, authoritative, and somehow familiar to Jamie, though he had never heard it before. Subject: Cross, Jamie, human. Terra designation Earth. Age: 17 standard years. This evaluation will determine your suitability for continued enrollment at the Galactica Strategic Academy. Jamie looked up toward the source of the voice, a shadowed observation booth high above the arena floor. "And who will be judging me, if I may ask?" "I am General Valzir, Strategic Operations Command. My decision in this matter is final." Jamie's heartbeat quickened, though his expression remained calm. "It's an honor, General. I've studied your career extensively." There was a pause before the general responded. "This is not an interview, human. This is an evaluation of a potential security threat." "Of course," Jamie agreed amicably. "Though I'm curious, is this standard procedure for transfer students, or am I receiving special treatment?" The general ignored the question. "The evaluation will proceed in 3 phases. First, a physical assessment to determine your combat capabilities. Second, a psychological probe to verify your mental stability. Third, a tactical challenge to test your strategic thinking under pressure." "And if I pass these tests?" "That will be determined after the evaluation." The restraints on the chair released suddenly. Jamie stood, rubbing his wrists as 4 figures entered the arena from different doors, each a combat instructor specializing in different fighting styles. "Phase 1 begins now," announced General Valzir. "Defend yourself." The 4 instructors moved with practiced coordination, surrounding Jamie in a tightening circle. They were armed with training weapons that would cause pain, but not permanent damage. Jamie made no move to defend himself. He simply stood in place, hands at his sides, that now familiar smile playing across his lips. The first instructor, a massive, 4-armed Chronos warrior, swung a training staff at Jamie's midsection. At the last possible moment, Jamie sidestepped with surprising speed, allowing the staff to pass harmlessly by. "Interesting choice," Jamie commented. "Starting with the most physically intimidating opponent to test, if fear affects my reaction time." The second instructor, a lithe Venusian assassin, darted in with twin daggers. Jamie again moved just enough to avoid injury, never countering, never striking back. "A speed test next," he observed, checking my reflexes against a naturally faster opponent. The third and fourth instructors attacked simultaneously, one wielding energy binders designed to immobilize, the other a neural disruptor that would scramble his nervous system temporarily. Jamie dropped to the floor, rolled beneath the energy binders, and came up directly in the path of the neural disruptor. The fourth instructor hesitated for a fraction of a second, enough time for Jamie to step inside her guard and gently place his hand over the weapon without attempting to take it. "You don't actually want to use this," he said quietly, looking directly into her eyes. "You've seen its effects on humans before, 3 years ago, on New Haven Colony." The instructor's eyes widened in shock, and her grip on the disruptor loosened. Enough! General Valzier's voice boomed. Phase 1 concluded. The instructors retreated, leaving Jamie alone in the center of the arena once more. He straightened his academy uniform and resumed his relaxed posture. An unorthodox defensive strategy, the general noted. You made no offensive moves. I was asked to defend myself, Jamie replied. Not to attack. Most would interpret defense as including counterattacks. Perhaps. But effective defense doesn't always require hurting others. From the viewing stations, Jamie could feel the eyes of the Zeta 13 students on him. Threxia in particular was leaning forward, her fiery hair burning with unusual stillness that indicated intense concentration. Phase 2, announced the general. Psychological probe. A new figure entered the arena, Dr. Sen, carrying what appeared to be a small metallic crown. This device will allow us to project your conscious mind into a shared psychological space. We will observe your responses to various stimuli. Jamie eyed the device warily. And what protections are in place to prevent unauthorized access to my memories or thoughts? This is not a negotiation, Dr. Sen stated flatly. Either submit to the evaluation or face immediate expulsion. Jamie sighed. Very well. As the device was placed on his head, he closed his eyes. The arena around him seemed to dissolve, replaced by a featureless white space. Dr. Sen's voice echoed around him. The construct will respond to both your conscious and subconscious mind. We will introduce scenarios to evaluate your psychological responses. The white space shifted, forming into the burning village from the earlier simulation. New Haven Colony on the day of the massacre. This time, however, the scene was more detailed, more vivid. Jamie could hear individual screams, recognize specific faces among the dead and dying. This is the foundation trauma. Dr. Sen's voice explained clinically. The event that shaped your subsequent development. Jamie walked through the burning village, his expression solemn but composed. You're trying to provoke an emotional response, to see if the memory still affects me. Does it? Of course. Jamie knelt beside the body of a young girl, his sister Sarah. I'm human. We don't forget our pain. We carry it. The scene shifted again. Now, Jamie stood in a dark room filled with computer terminals. His younger self, perhaps 12 years old, was hunched over a keyboard, eyes red from sleeplessness, fingers flying across the interface. The years you claim were spent in foster care, Dr. Sen observed. In reality, you were teaching yourself to hack military-grade security systems, hunting for information about those responsible for New Haven. Young Jamie looked up, seeming to stare directly at his older self. I found them, the boy whispered. The Ember Brigade, Valzier, the whole operation. The real Jamie watched his younger self with a mixture of sadness and pride. Yes, I did. The scene changed once more. Now he stood in the office of a high-ranking Earth military official. His 15-year-old self sat across from a stern-faced man in uniform. We can use someone with your skills. Cross, the officer was saying. Work with us, and we'll help you get into the academy. Place you where you can do the most good. Young Jamie's face was impassive. You mean where I can be your spy? I mean where you can help prevent another New Haven. The current Jamie turned away from the scene. Enough. You've made your point. You know why I'm here. The white space returned, and the psychological construct began to dissolve. Phase 2 concluded, announced Dr. Sen's voice. Jamie opened his eyes to find himself back in the arena. The device was removed from his head, and he took a deep breath to center himself. Interesting results, General Valzier commented from his observation booth. Your psychological profile indicates a deeply traumatized individual who has channeled his trauma into a single-minded pursuit. Yet you display none of the typical markers of post-traumatic stress. Your emotional regulation is exceptional for a human. Thank you, Jamie offered with a slight smile. It wasn't a compliment. It's concerning. Humans who suppress trauma to this degree typically experience psychological fracturing. Who said I've suppressed anything? Jamie looked up directly at the general's booth. I've simply chosen how to respond to what happened. There was a pause before the general spoke again. Final phase. Tactical challenge. The arena floor began to reconfigure itself, sections rising and falling to create a complex three-dimensional battle space. Holographic projections appeared, representing various combat units, resource points, and objectives. This is a standard command-level tactical simulation, explained General Valzier. You will be given control of a mixed-species battle group, tasked with achieving 3 objectives, while opposing forces attempt to stop you. Your performance will be measured against Academy standards for strategic operations candidates. Jamie approached the tactical display. And my opponents? You will face the combined tactical expertise of the Zeta-13 class. They will operate as a unified opposing force under Instructor Milna's coordination. From the viewing stations, the students of Zeta-13 were each provided with tactical interfaces linked to the main simulation. Threxia, as the class's top student, was designated field commander for their forces. The simulation began. Jamie studied the battlefield for several minutes without issuing any commands to his units, which immediately put him at a disadvantage as Zeta-13's forces began aggressive maneuvers to secure key positions. Hesitation will cost you, human. Threxia's voice came through the tactical communication system. Our first units are already moving on your southern flank. Jamie smiled at her holographic representation. I'm not hesitating. I'm listening. To what? To what this simulation is really testing. Jamie finally began issuing commands to his forces, but rather than engaging the enemy directly, he positioned them in seemingly random defensive formations with significant gaps in coverage. Instructor, Milna's voice cut in. Unorthodox strategy, cross. Your forces are scattered and vulnerable. Are they? Jamie highlighted a series of terrain features that his units were positioned near. Or are they exactly where they need to be? As Zeta-13's forces advanced into what they perceived as weaknesses in Jamie's defense, the true nature of his strategy became apparent. He had positioned his units to funnel the enemy into natural bottlenecks, where even superior numbers would be neutralized by the terrain. More significantly, he had identified and targeted the communication relays that allowed Zeta-13 to coordinate their attacks. One by one, these relays were disabled, forcing the opposing commanders to act independently without the benefit of Threxia's central command. Clever, General Valzier acknowledged. But dividing your enemy isn't enough to achieve your objectives. Dividing them was never the goal, Jamie replied. Understanding them was... He highlighted the 3 main objectives his forces were tasked with securing. Then, instead of attacking them directly, he initiated a communication link to the enemy units, guarding each one. What are you doing? Milna demanded. Negotiating, Jamie replied simply. To everyone's surprise, he began offering individual deals to each enemy commander, Liridia, the Quantum Wraith, and several others, playing on the specific motivations and priorities he had observed during his brief time in their class. To Liridia, he offered safe passage for her forces in exchange for access to the objective she guarded. To the Quantum Wraith, he proposed a mutual defense pact against a third party that had been harassing her forces. To others, he offered resource-sharing agreements, tactical data, or simply the promise not to target their home positions. One by one, the Zeta-13 students found themselves responding to these offers, some out of genuine tactical interest, others out of curiosity. Before long, Jamie had negotiated access to all 3 objectives without engaging in direct combat with the majority of enemy forces. This is unprecedented, Milna stated, a note of grudging respect in her voice. He's achieving his objectives through diplomatic means in a combat simulation. This isn't diplomacy, Threxia argued, her fiery hair burning with frustration. It's psychological manipulation. Is there a meaningful difference in warfare? Jamie asked. All conflict is ultimately psychological. It's about convincing your opponent that resistance is either futile or not in their best interest. As the simulation concluded, with Jamie's forces securing all three objectives with minimal casualties, General Valzier's voice carried a new tone, one of wary respect. Evaluation complete. The results are unexpected. Jamie stood in the center of the arena, looking up at the general's observation booth. May I ask what happens now? Now we discuss your true purpose at this academy, Mr. Cross. The arena emptied as students and instructors were dismissed. Only Jamie remained, still standing in the center of the tactical display that continued to show his successful strategy. After several minutes, a door opened, and a tall, imposing figure entered. General Valzier was not what Jamie had expected. Rather than the monstrous appearance his imagination had conjured over years of hatred, the general was almost elegant, tall and slender with metallic-looking skin, and eyes that shifted color constantly like oil on water. His uniform bore the insignia of the Strategic Operations Command, the highest military authority in the Galactic Alliance. 7 years, the general said without preamble. 7 years you've been planning this. Impressive for one so young. Jamie's perpetual smile was gone now, replaced by a focused intensity. You remember New Haven, then? One of many operations, nothing personal. It was to me. Jamie's voice remained steady, despite the emotion behind his words. 3,000 colonists, including my family. The general moved to the tactical display, studying the final configuration of forces. An unfortunate necessity. Human expansion was destabilizing that sector. Examples needed to be made. Examples, children were burned alive. War contains many regrettable necessities. Valzier turned to face Jamie directly. What I find more interesting is what you've done since. You could have sought simple revenge. Instead, you orchestrated this elaborate infiltration of the academy. Why? Jamie stepped closer to the general. Because killing you wouldn't be enough. The system you represent would simply replace you and continue. I needed to understand how that system works, and how to break it. Break it, Valzier laughed, a sound like metal grinding. You're one human boy against the most sophisticated military organization in the galaxy. Am I? Jamie removed the small device from his pocket, the same one he had shown Crix. This has been recording and broadcasting everything since I arrived at the academy. Every test, every simulation, every word you've just spoken about regrettable necessities and examples made of civilian colonies. Valzier's color-shifting eyes fixed on the device. Broadcasting to whom? Everyone. The full Galactic Council. Every news network in Allied space. The Earth Defense Force. And most importantly, Jamie gestured to the viewing stations where the students had sat earlier. To every student in this academy. The general's composed demeanor faltered. That's impossible. Our security protocols. We're designed to prevent external hacking, not internal broadcasting. Jamie smiled again, but there was no warmth in it. Did you really think Earth sent its most promising young minds to your academy without taking precautions? We've been monitoring your special training programs for years. The memory modifications, the psychological conditioning, the creation of living weapons from children like Threxia. A new voice joined the conversation. Is this true? Threxia stood in the doorway, her fiery hair burning low and blue, a sign of deep emotional turmoil in her species. Behind her were other students from Zeta 13, their expressions ranging from confusion to growing anger. Ashara, Valzier said, using Threxia's true name in what appeared to be an attempt to regain control. You shouldn't be here. Return to your dormitory immediately. I asked if it was true, Threxia repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. Did you burn New Haven Colony as an example? Have you been modifying our memories? The general straightened, his authority reasserting itself. These are matters of galactic security, not for students to question. You have been given the honor of serving the Alliance. By becoming weapons, Jamie interrupted. By having your identities erased and your minds programmed with hatred for specific species, particularly humans, to make you more effective killers. Threxia's gaze moved from Valzir to Jamie. You knew all along. This is why you came to Zeta 13. Not for revenge, but for justice, Jamie finished for her. And truth. Every student deserves to know what's being done to them. Every family deserves to know why their children come back changed. Every victim deserves acknowledgement. Valzir moved with surprising speed for his size, grabbing Jamie by the throat and lifting him off the ground. You've overplayed your hand, boy. Broadcasting or not, you won't leave this room alive. Jamie struggled to speak through the general's grip. Killing me won't stop the transmission, and it won't erase what they've heard. He's right, came Instructor Milna's voice as she entered behind the students. Stand down, General. Security forces are already responding to council orders. The transmission reached them 20 minutes ago. Valzir's grip tightened momentarily before he released Jamie, who dropped to his knees, gasping for air. This isn't over, the general hissed. The system exists for a reason. The Alliance needs its defenders. Defenders, yes, Jamie rasped, rubbing his throat. Not executioners, not child soldiers with programmed hatred. Security drones filled the room, surrounding General Valzir. A holographic projection appeared, the stern face of the Galactic Council's security director. General Valzir, you are relieved of command pending investigation into serious violations of Alliance law, including unauthorized memory modification of Academy students, illegal military operations against civilian targets, and the destruction of New Haven Colony. As the general was led away, the students of Zeta 13 gathered around Jamie, who was still catching his breath. Why didn't you just kill him? Laridia asked, genuine confusion in her voice. After what he did to your family. Because that would have made me like him, Jamie replied. Someone who thinks death is a solution, rather than a failure. Threxia stepped forward, her hair gradually returning to its normal orange-red flames. What happens to us now? If our memories were modified? If we were conditioned? Who are we really? Jamie looked at each of them in turn. That's for you to decide. The Alliance's best medical experts are already preparing memory recovery protocols. You'll be offered the chance to restore what was taken from you. Your true names, your families, your past. But the choice will be yours. And you? Threxia asked. What will you do now that your mission is complete? Jamie smiled. A genuine smile this time, without the edge of calculation that had characterized it before. I'm going home. My part in this story is done. 3 days later, Jamie stood at the Academy's main docking bay, a small bag containing his few possessions slung over his shoulder. The Earth Defense Force had sent a ship to retrieve him, a recognition of his service that came with an offer of a full scholarship to any university of his choosing. To his surprise, the entire Zeta 13 class had gathered to see him off. They stood in a semicircle, no longer radiating hostility, but rather a complex mixture of respect, uncertainty, and in some cases, gratitude. Instructor Milna approached first. The Academy Board has asked me to extend an invitation. After you complete your education on Earth, there would be a place for you here, as an instructor in our newly formed Ethics and Strategic Philosophy Department. Jamie shook his head. Thank you, but I think I've spent enough time in military institutions. There are other ways to make a difference. Threxia stepped forward next. Her appearance had changed subtly. Her fiery hair was more controlled, less wild, and she carried herself with a quieter confidence. I've requested to be part of the Reform Committee, to help ensure what happened to us doesn't happen to others. They couldn't ask for a better advocate, Jamie said warmly. I still don't understand why you didn't hate us, Threxia admitted. We were part of the system that destroyed your home. You were victims too, Jamie replied. Just in a different way. Hatred wouldn't have helped either of us heal. The boarding call for his ship echoed through the docking bay. Jamie shouldered his bag and took one last look at the class that had been at the center of his plan for so long. I have a question, Laridia said suddenly. That first day, when you walked into our classroom, why were you smiling? You knew who we were, what had been done to us, even what had been done to you. Why smile? Jamie considered this for a moment. Because a smile is the one weapon no one expects. It makes people curious instead of defensive. It suggests you know something they don't. And most importantly, he smiled again. That same confident expression they had all come to know. It reminds you that no matter what happens, they haven't taken everything from you. Your choice to smile despite pain. That's something no one can program or erase. He turned and walked up the boarding ramp of the Earthship. At the top, he paused and looked back at the academy that had been both the focus of his revenge and, unexpectedly, the place where he had finally let it go. Threxia called out one last question. Will we see you again? Jamie's smile widened. The galaxy's a smaller place than it seems. I suspect our paths will cross again someday. As the ship's door began to close, he added, when they do, I hope we'll all be smiling for better reasons. The door sealed shut, and the ship departed, leaving behind an academy forever changed by the human boy who had entered its most dangerous class, and smiled.